Welcome to Many Voices, Many Visions. I'm your host, Norma Holland. This week, we examine the modern workplace. After years of layoffs and retirements, today's workplace looks vastly different than the one perhaps in which you started your career. Today, workplaces are more multicultural, more multi-generational than ever before, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily easier for employers to find talented people who fit their needs. With us to talk about this and, of course, other changes in the workplace is Ed Ciaschi, Director of the Organizational Learning and Human Resource Development Graduate Program at St. John Fisher College. Thank you for being with us, Ed.
Thank you.
It's wonderful to have you back and to talk about such a timely topic. You know, we've just come off a campaign, an election, a special election, in which many of the candidates were talking about keeping jobs local and jobs and jobs and jobs, which, of course, so very vital to our industry now that we've become an industry here in Rochester fueled by small businesses.
Right, right. And I do believe that businesses in Rochester, based upon new companies moving in, older companies downsizing, they are our future, clearly. I mean, and if we take a look at some of the areas, whether it be healthcare, food service, things of call centers, any sort of customer service, for areas where a degree is not present, if an individual doesn't have a BS or any sort of baccalaureate degree but does have an associate's or a high school, there are many opportunities in the Rochester area, even though we have 8% unemployment. For those with college degrees, especially in the engineering arena, there are plenty of opportunities. At very nice starting salaries.
And that's typically been the case, though. Engineering has always been, or engineering type fields have always been sort of recession-proof, if you will. They're always in need. We're always going to need people to build things and conceptualize things for us and find out ways to do things more efficiently, if you will. But you talk about Rochester's industry or Rochester's workplace. We do have that unemployment rate of about 8%. I think nationally it's about 10% maybe? Nationally or a little below?
I believe it's 9%.
Yeah.
Northeast is 8. New York is specifically overall is 7.9.
Okay, so we're just above the state average.
Right.
So let's take a look at our workplace here in Rochester. We do have, the latest census numbers just came out. We have a population that is aging. Of course, that's the case everywhere. And, you know, we talk about generations all the time, and we see some of them listed here on the screen. People who are traditionalists are between the ages of 66 to 86 years old in 2011. The baby boomer generation, 47 to 65 years old. Generation X, my generation, 31 to 46 years old. And Generation Y, 16 to 30 years old. And Generation Z, they're younger than 16 years old. So this is who, and in some workplaces, you'll find all of them, or a good number of them. What does that, or what implication does that have for businesses today?
An enormous implication. Baby boomers are working much longer.
They are.
And as they have gotten older, their attitude toward work has changed a bit. The thing that we're finding out is the baby boomers' attitude is very similar to the Generation Y attitudes opposed to your generation being X.
Okay, so let's talk about that, okay? What is the attitude, would you say, amongst baby boomers who are now working later in life than they may have planned?
They want to balance their life. They want to be home. They want to work. They might be working for economic reasons and because of the market or whatever, but they need to work longer than they had originally intended to do. So they're looking for balance, work, family kind of balance, time off, flexible work hours, work from home, that sort of thing. Generation Y folks are looking for the same sort of components in their agreement or in their work environment.
Okay.
Generation X.
Hold on, I'm gonna have to stop you right there. So leave everyone in a little bit of suspense. We got to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to find out how my generation perhaps may be different than my mother and father's generation in the way we think about work and what that means for the workplace. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We continue our discussion about a multi-generational multicultural workplace with Ed Ciaschi. He is a human resources expert at St. John Fisher College. Thanks for being with us. When we left, we were discussing the differences in the generations, the baby boomers and what they want when it comes to work these days, because many of them are working longer, versus Generation Y, which is the generation after me. I'm in the Generation X. So we were starting to talk about people in my age group.
Okay, in your age group, similar to the baby boomers, but as we started to talk about, the baby boomers have begun to change and are more similar today in their later years to Generation Y. Your generation, Generation X, would be more similar to what the baby boomers were.
Right.
Such as you may stay at the same company for 20 plus years, whereas a Generation Y person might have 7 or 8 jobs in their lifetime.
Wow.
They may only have 1 or 2.
They're more comfortable moving around.
They're more comfortable moving around, and they are more committed to their career as a subject, as a profession, than they are a company. They will go where the work is, and they will go where the work and the opportunity allows them to balance their personal objectives. Family is very important to them.
So interesting.
Recreation is very important to them. Time off. The other thing that's very important to them is the technology that the organization has available for their use. And does their technology keep up with the changes?
It's so amazing because I just came from a meeting in which my boss was discussing the changing nature of our job as journalists, and the technology that we need to have as journalists, i.e. smartphones, tablet computers, things like that. I mean, we try to stay up on top of that. This is all very fascinating, but when it comes to hiring people in these different generations or having them in one organization, that presents challenges for employers, doesn't it? Because now the employer has to be up on the mindset of the employer. I mean, it used to be when my parents were growing up, you wanted a job, you did what the boss asked you. You didn't go in with your own agenda.
Right.
But now employers are really having to think of the psyche of their employee.
Absolutely. The challenge for managers today, you could be sitting in your office as a manager and you could look out and say you had 10 people. You could have 2 or 3 boomers, 2 or 3 people falling into X, 2 or 3 people falling into Y. And all of them have a different description of how they want their relationship with you, their manager, and the company at large. So the difficulty and the skill, or I should say maybe the opportunity, because your workforce now looks like the community you live in and the customers you might be dealing with.
So this puts the onus then on the manager to be more creative in the way that they deal with their employees. I often come across some very poor managers who don't know what to do with the people they have in their in their employ. They don't know what to do with them. They're not creative enough to think of ways to utilize them to the organization's benefit. So managers really have to be very savvy these days and be more critical thinkers then when it comes to that.
Absolutely, and be willing. They have to be willing to address the differences in each of the generations. And the Generation Ys have a very different attitude in the sense of their primary driver is participation, whereas the Generation X and the boomers before them, they were more driven by success, by recognition with a job title, an office, perhaps more earning.
So you're saying they identified themselves more personally with the job, whereas why it's my job, it's not who I am.
Exactly. It is not who they are, it's part of their life, but it's certainly not who I am, and I want to participate in this, and I will work here for as long as it works for me.
Okay, now this sounds a little self-indulgent, don't you think, considering the unemployment rate? Shouldn't you be willing to do whatever the boss asks you to do?
Well, They may be willing. It doesn't. I'm not. I wouldn't suggest that they're not willing, but they may be willing or are willing and will do it. But they expect something in return.
I see.
Perhaps the boomers are just will do it for the sake of doing it because they were told to do it, and they're not going to challenge the reason why.
Okay.
They don't need a term paper to explain the reason why.
And this is a fascinating topic, and we could talk more at length about this, and I hope to have you on again to talk about this very topic.
Sure.
And of course in Rochester's changing workplace. Thank you so much for this. This is so enlightening. And again, real quick before we go, if we could just put up that screen with the different generations and see where you fall in which category you fall in, and think about how you view your job. We'll be right back after this. We've got much more straight ahead.